Hello Videoland people. Welcome back to Pope's Projects and Project 818 SRX. She's just about complete. We got the wing was the last big mod that was on my list of things to do. She's registered, she's been inspected, she's good to go on the road. So logically, the next step is to take it all apart. I'm gonna fire her up. She has been running in at least 5 months, getting close to 6 now. So fuel should still be good. The battery's on the charger, you can probably hear that in the background. All I'm doing is warming it up, just getting the oil up to temperature. Probably give it a couple of revs. I want to check something on this oil pressure and see where it's at as the RPMs rise. I won't be able to do too much of that because the oil coolers are bypassed. But I'm just hoping to get an idea of what the oil pressures are like at certain RPMs. I think that my fail-safe settings are just set a little bit too high for this setup. Yeah, once she's all warmed up, then I'll shut her down, do a quick compression test, and then drain the oil, and I'll inspect the oil for any bearing material, anything that could have resulted from it running on low oil pressure before.
A few moments later.
I don't know about y'all, but it's pretty exciting to hear her run. She fired up no problem after sitting 5-6 months, which is awesome. Got up to temperature, no problem. I was getting an oil protection fail-safe code come up. So what's happening is I got it set for 20 psi at 1,000 RPM, and then 30 psi at 2,000 RPM, and then it climbs up to I think 70 psi at 5,000 RPM and above. So on initial startup, when you first fire it up, she's just over 100 psi, like quite a bit of pressure on the cold oil. However, once she gets up to about 60 degrees Celsius at idle, it's dropping down to about 19 psi, which is fine. It's more than enough for an idling engine. However, my failsafe is set for 20, so I'm getting that code, and I'm pretty sure that as the oil gets even warmer, throughout the RPMs it drops down a little bit. So what I need to do is just get a baseline for what that is, at what RPM I'm getting what pressure when the oil is up to normal operating temperature, which I don't even remember what it is. Somewhere closer to 180 or 90, I think, is your typical high oil pressure. So as long as we're at a healthy temperature with the oil coolers, we should be. I want it to be not hitting that code. I want that fail safe to just be for when we actually have an issue. Other than that, I checked compression and it was pretty good. Not great. Let's see the numbers. So on the front, 89, 98, 99. That's pretty damn good. And then on the back, 80, 85, 90. So that 80 is a little low. Keep in mind too, like I just, idled it for 5-10 minutes and it's been sitting for 5 months. So it did come up last time after a little bit of running. So I'd imagine it'll come back up. I'll probably, before I put the spark plugs back in, I'll probably squirt a little more Marvel Miracle Oil in there and just help those seals. But I'm gonna go ahead and not rebuild the motor, especially after checking the oil. In the little filter that I filtered the oil coming out, there was nothing. And then when I cut out the oil filter, nothing at all. It's completely clean. Almost like there's only about 100 miles on the oil. Anyway, I'm gonna change it regardless because I need to change all my oil lines. Now, I did have that massive oil leak in the front, and I thought it was one of these fittings, because these are just the push-style fittings that I had actually put a clamp on. Now, it's not just a worm gear. It has the smooth on the inside, so it wasn't that. But I was thinking that it was failing at these, because I don't know if you've seen the Rob Dahm video, his Corvette had one of those fail, and I later found out that because the rotary runs such high oil pressure, these are pretty risky, and most guys just steer clear of them. So I thought it was this one or this one that had leaked, because this is where everything was covered in oil. But if we look right here, well, hopefully you can see that. But right here, on the end of my finger, there we go. That's a little break. So these oil lines, the way they're made, are like a spiral wound oil line, and it split. It's not even like it's a good ½ inch away from the barbed bit on the hose end on the inside. So the hose just failed. It was cheap hose. Well, not cheap. It was still expensive hose. It's dash 10 hose, and I had to buy 30 feet of it. But it was a lot cheaper than the braided stuff. And I was able to buy it locally. I bought it at Mopac, Performance World brand, I believe. Anyway, long story short, I'm going to change all of that oil line, because now it's not just a hose end. It's just a random bit of hose that could fail anywhere. There's not even a high stress. That's just a straight shot there. So that's getting cut. So as with anything, do it once, do it right. Do it a second time, overdo it. So I got this nylon braided Earl's Pro Light. This is rated for 350 psi. It's got far too expensive fittings, but it's the right line for the job, and I'll never have a concern with that at all. Again, a few other little things I'm gonna do. If you look back here, you notice my intake manifold is off. This is where my filter goes. Annoyingly, because I put this sandwich plate, let's see if I can get a better angle in there. Because I have this sandwich plate for putting my oil temp sensor, it makes it too high, and when I run a Napa Gold oil filter, they're a bit taller. That's at the Wix oil filter. It's a bit taller, and I actually couldn't get the oil filter off without taking off my throttle body, which, because I didn't have a gasket for it, I've got silicone in there, and even taking the bolts out, I could not get it to separate without possibly applying more force than I wanted to. So I just took out the whole upper intake manifold, because the oil filter was sitting here. Now, I knew this was going to be an issue, because I could see that before. So I bought, if I can find it here, there we go. So I bought this guy that replaces the entire pedestal. So it's no longer a sandwich piece. This replaces where the factory oil filter would go. and it's got the out for my oil coolers, and then it's also got the couple of ports here that I can use for the temp sensor. And then this will lower it down about the thickness of that sandwich plate, which means I can still run the filter in the normal location. I don't know, some guys would say remote locate it, but it's just more oil lines and it's not necessary. And then, believe it or not, it's kind of nice having that oil filter up there because it just drains out completely and you just unscrew it. And for some reason, the RX-8, it doesn't want to drain out completely, which is weird. In the RX-8, even after you let it drain for a while, you still unscrew that and you get oil down the side of the motor. But on this one, I spun that off and nothing came out. So I got no reason to relocate it. I'm just going to remove one more connection by removing that sandwich plate, and the OEM pedestals are known for leaking, and this one came with some nice new O-rings that go in here. So I'm going to solve an oil leak and be able to change my oil without removing my intake manifold, because that'd be normal. So that's it for this episode. There's nothing exciting about changing oil lines. There's lots of good videos on making oil lines. This is my first one. It went really well, but I don't need to do a how-to on this stuff. That's not really my style. So I'm going to replace all those oil lines. Probably going to move my thermostat to a better location, because I did notice that was a pain in the ass to tighten oil lines when I originally found a few leaking the fittings, and when I had to bypass the oil coolers, it was also brutal. I'm also going to make a line so that if I did have an issue, let's say something, I got in a wreck and on track or something, and I wanted to be able to limp it home or still drive it, I want to be able to bypass the oil coolers or bypass one. So I'm going to make a temporary line that I'll take with me. I'll probably just store it in the front. That way, if I ever do have an issue where I want to bypass that system, I can. And so if the thermostat, which is in the front, is easier to access, then it'll be a lot easier to do that. And I want to kind of build it with that in mind to be able to do that. Also, the panels accessing the back behind the oil cooler were all riveted on. I'm going to change that to rivet nuts so I can actually access and inspect the oil cooler, because they're not cheap, but they're not a brand name. They're just CX Racing oil coolers. So I had also considered the possibility that one of those had actually punctured or failed, but they seem to be perfect. So next up will be, after I do the oil system, will be upgrading the fuel system. And that's going to be a big one, but I'll get into that next episode. So if you like what I'm doing, like, subscribe, comment. Always welcome your feedback. And until next time, peace. On the next episode of Pope's Projects, I somehow turned my drill into a smoke machine. I pretend I'm shooting McGavin with my finger guns. And I check for leaks while flipping off my audience.